My experience with extreme emotion is fairly large, considering that I'm schizophrenic, and though I've been stable for quite a time, every emotion that we experience as human beings is often, for schizophrenics, amplified. It is amplified in the sense that many things are either the worst or the best. Most things are either the worst or the best. They always feel like something good always feels basically the best or far better than it would in its proper context in a properly chemically balanced mind. Bad experiences like pain or fear or hatred or something like that is also amplified. And anything that we hate it with all our hearts. Anything that we feel emotionally painful, physical pain isn't as a big deal for schizophrenics as it is for other people most of the time. But emotional pain is terrible because you feel it in all its terrible glory, and it is amplified to the extent of imagination for a lot of us. You know, I could be considered a minor schizophrenic, uh, even with my meds. But and I do take meds. I finally found some meds that work for me, and many schizophrenics do. So my emotions and my experiences of the positive and negative sides of human life are toned down, quite a bit with the medication. Thank God. There is a side effect that I'm not as bright, as crisp, as focused as I am without my meds, and my thoughts are slower because a lot of the time for us schizophrenics, our minds move so quickly that it's like we're so far ahead of our mouths when we're in a conversation that we start to stutter because we're just so far ahead in what we want to say, faster than we can possibly get it out, for instance. And even with medication, I have my Muse headband and it monitors brain waves. And even with medication, my mind just has these really frequent and compressed thoughts in a row. And usually, the thoughts of a normal brain would be a little bit more of a curve than a choppy, static type of thing. Now, my experience with extreme emotion has taught me something. It has taught me the conclusion of hatred, the conclusion of fear, the end result of these things if followed far enough into themselves. Now, when I was not medicated properly and experiencing most of my schizophrenic, terror, I was very afraid, but also very hateful because I didn't like myself and it made me want to hate everyone else. I didn't realize that at the time. But the hate was so intense that I realized, shortly after it reached its peak, that the hate that I was feeling towards other people was actually hurting me. Now, I don't mean that it was cause and effect in the actual world, and I don't even mean karma. I'm talking about being a hateful person literally deteriorates your willpower, deteriorates your ability to function successfully in anything that you do, and it deteriorates your willingness to live. Even if you don't blame yourself and you're just a hateful person, much of who you are deteriorates. Much of what you would consider positive about yourself or things that you want to gain deteriorates in your life, and it all echoes that frequency of hate that you're just constantly embracing in your head if you choose hate. And hate is always a choice. Now, we can understand a lot of people if they choose to hate somebody because, let's say, that person raped them, or maybe that person stole from them, or maybe that person is just a terrible person to them all the time and their family. Maybe that person was very mean to their animals for no reason. And you can hate a person quite a bit, and it can be justified. It can be justified, I would even say the majority of the time. But what hate does to us as an individual is far more than anything that it can enact on the person being hated by us. We can dream of revenge, but the revenge is always wreaked within more times than you could possibly do it in the external world. Now, fear. Fear is something that, oh man, I have experienced in spades. I'm much less fearful now. I still have my fears. I'm not completely fearless, but when I was going through a lot of my schizophrenic emotional problems, and I wasn't medicated properly, like I said, I didn't have an antipsychotic, so I would hallucinate. So anything that I imagined that I was afraid of, I would see. My worst fears would always manifest before me. And, the movie way back in the day, The Ring and The Grudge, which are very similar movies, and if you know what I'm talking about, then you know how creepy those movies are. Just look up The Grudge or The Ring in horror section, and you'll know what I'm talking about. But I would basically see that, young woman in both cases that had a lot of hair over her face and made terrible sounds and would kind of jump staticky towards you while seemingly walking. Anyway, without more specifics, the hair and all that going across the ceiling and the eyes, I would see that. And it wouldn't be crisp, but it would come in flashes. And in the worst moments, it would be, for a few seconds. And then I never knew when I was going to see it again. It was very difficult to sleep, as you can imagine, especially seeing hair. This is why I still sleep with a light on today, even though that sounds childish. I still sleep with a small light on today because I remember trying to sleep and seeing those hair and those eyes extend across the ceiling, and it just really creeping me out. So, now, as a side note, the way I combat my fear of the dark now, even though it's really hard to do so before I sleep because, when we sleep, we feel the most vulnerable. I walk through the forest, when it is dark as hell, and there are no lights, and a lot of the time I like to go off the path. And you can just barely see in the forest that I go through. You can just barely make out the edges of trees and stuff, even with complete night vision. And I don't use a flashlight, and I try to get over my fear of the dark. I just try to even face it now, even though my fear is much less. But living in a constant state of fear and it going to its extreme taught me that fear is more dangerous to our psyche, more dangerous to us as a healthy, spiritually, emotionally developing person than really more than hatred and more than anything else. Now, if you drink every day, you drink quite a bit every day, your brain cells might deteriorate. Now, if you're afraid every day, and most hours of the day you could say that you're afraid. I wouldn't say every single moment because that's not realistic, but most hours of the day, if you're just constantly afraid, it will deteriorate your stability. You will start to be afraid of things that really can't threaten you, and even less so if they were imaginary in the first place. You start to not focus on the positive side of your life or developing as a human being, trying to have relations or relationships and have friends and communicate with your family. You retreat from all of that. You retreat from yourself as a human being and basically fold into yourself and create this emotional and lack thereof of spirituality wall around you as a person, as an individual, to where it's really hard for you to connect, but you feel safer because you're in this ball. You're divided from everyone, and it is very emotionally isolating. It's very emotionally painful when you allow fear to build that wall around you as an individual, when you allow it to take hold of who you are. So think about that next time you consider how many things you're afraid of and how many things you hate as an individual. Now, of course, when I felt love, I really felt love. And during sex, sex felt great. And drugs felt great. And this is my high school years. This was, not 8, 9, 10 years ago is when a lot of these experiences I'm talking about happened. But all that stuff felt great. But I became over-reliant upon them because my terrible experiences were so terrible, and I didn't learn how to deal with them until later because I didn't try to deal with them. I tried to cover them up. I tried to retreat. I tried to medicate myself away from these terrible experiences, these extreme emotions. Now, from my extreme experiences, what I'm trying to communicate to you is that if you take hate, fear, and allow it to rule your mind, if you take it to its extremes, which it will develop into if you continually hate day after day, and it gets a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and it's kind of like a snowball rolling down a hill. It becomes an avalanche, and this is where it will lead decades into your life, and you'll reach a point where you're like, well, it's hard to change how I think now, but this is killing me emotionally and spiritually. But it's really hard to change once you get decades into your life. So I would highly recommend that the loving thoughts you have within you, allow those to expand. Allow yourself to try and understand other people instead of judging them, or instead of hating them, especially. And even the ones that you think are just terrible people and they deserve to be in jail, they deserve to be punished, this or that. You can still think that, but don't allow hate to take hold. Even for the most terrible people, say that, okay, yes, they deserve punishment. They deserve to be put away forever, and even working against people, reporting them if they have an effect on you, if they have an effect on somebody else that is illegal. I'm being very vague here, but that's the purpose of this. I'm just trying to help you with the message that I'm trying to communicate. But if somebody if you need to tell somebody something about what they've done to you, if they've been a real asshole to you and you need to tell them that, if they've really hurt you and your family, or you and your friends, or just you by yourself in the workplace, in social gatherings, let it be known, tell your emotions, and say you need to not mess with me anymore, blah, 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 blah. But don't allow hate to be the ruling factor in your actions. Allow your actions to manifest regardless of extreme emotion when it involves negative emotion. Now, when it involves positive emotion, spread the love around, man. Spread it around. But we have to allow our inner world to be conducive to what we want to see in the external world. If we want to see more love, we have to manifest it within. We have to spread it within. We have to embrace it within. And if we do that, we can be like, I guess you could say, just imagine sonic emitters, where you have this love frequency you're just sending out everywhere. Now, as far as the literal vibration of consciousness, that's another thing. But I'm just talking about intention. If you have that intention and that embrace within yourself, you're going to spread love around, regardless of if it's complimenting people, or just being nice, listening to people, or not demanding that you be heard, but hearing people. Things like that. Those things help. And then your actions, giving people a little money here and there, allowing people to use some of your stuff if it doesn't go overboard to where you think they're going to take it or misuse you. But all these little things are like emitters of the love that we should all share. So hey, thank you very much for watching. This has been a long rant. It's been kind of a long rant. I didn't mean for it to go this long, but I hope it's been interesting. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or problems with extreme emotion yourself, and you wish to get some feedback from me, I will try to get to your comments. There's been a lot of them on my channel recently. But shoot it down in the comment section below. If you like this video at all, hit that thumbs up down there. It really helps the channel. And these have been my experience with extreme emotions. Thank you very much. Y'all have a great day.